The wind howled across the frozen wasteland, its icy breath lashing against the jagged peaks and vast tundras that stretched endlessly beneath an iron-gray sky. Snow swirled in chaotic spirals, a ceaseless storm that had carved the land into a brutal, unforgiving expanse where only the hardiest life forms dared exist. To the invaders, it was a dead world, silent, empty, and ripe for the taking. High above the Arctic Circle, the alien warship hovered in defiance of nature's fury. Sleek, obsidian black, and predatory, it cast an eerie glow upon the frostbitten land below as drones swarmed from its belly, mapping and analyzing the frozen domain. Within the vessel, the Vyrhans observed their new conquest with a mixture of amusement and contempt. Commander Wytrak, a towering figure of sleek, segmented armor and cold violet eyes, stood at the center of the command deck. His species had crushed countless worlds beneath their might, their biomechanical physiology making them adaptable to nearly every environment. Yet, as he gazed upon the storm-racked terrain displayed on the ship's hollow panels, he felt only disdain. "This world is fragile," he mused, voice resonating with mechanical undertones. "Its people are weak. They cluster in warmer regions, leaving this land barren and abandoned. A primitive planet, easily conquered." His second-in-command, the more analytical Vyrhan tactician Uvax, adjusted the data feeds with a flick of his elongated fingers. "Initial scans show no significant resistance in this region," he confirmed. "Primitive carbon-based life forms inhabit the lower latitudes, but here, nothing of consequence." The soldiers aboard the ship murmured in agreement, their movements fluid, efficient. They had faced planetary defenses that could split moons in half, armies that wielded technologies rivaling their own. What threat could this frozen rock possibly pose? Far below, amidst the blinding snowfall and relentless cold, unseen eyes watched them. The Special Forces team lay silent beneath layers of snow and insulated gear, their bodies pressed against the ice as they observed the alien landing site through high-powered optics. Captain Elias Voss peered through his scope, his breath slow and measured despite the frigid air seeping into his bones. His team had trained for every conceivable condition, but this was something else. "They don't look worried," muttered Lieutenant Anna Petrov, voice barely a whisper through their comms. Voss smirked beneath his thermal mask. "They should be." The mission was clear. High Command had been tracking the extraterrestrial intrusion since the first energy spikes registered in orbit. The world's major powers had scrambled to respond, but conventional forces would be useless in these conditions. The Arctic was an enemy unto itself, one Voss and his team had spent their lives mastering. A gust of wind cut across the ice, sending a fresh cascade of powder over them. The aliens remained oblivious, their confidence blinding them to the subtle but deadly truths of the terrain. From the warship, a detachment of Vyrhan foot soldiers deployed, their sleek armor glistening with adaptive shielding. They moved with mechanical precision, surveying the landscape with contemptuous ease. Their gait was smooth, effortless, their bio-enhanced musculature unbothered by the gravity or temperature. One of them bent down, brushing a gloved hand against the ice, scanning the composition with a pulse of blue light. "This terrain is brittle. Our forces will establish a stronghold here with minimal resistance." They had no idea. The first sign of failure was subtle, a sudden flicker in their HUDs, a glitch in the environmental readouts. The temperature readings dipped erratically. Their suits, designed for countless planetary atmospheres, compensated, but the ice beneath their feet was no ordinary battlefield. Within minutes, the first soldier staggered, his movements slowing. Then another. Their internal regulators fought against the creeping cold, but their arrogance had betrayed them. Unlike their human adversaries, they had not adapted. They had assumed. Commander Wytrak watched from the command deck, irritation flickering across his usually unreadable features. "Report." Uvax frowned at the readouts. "Strange. The unit's bio readings are fluctuating." He tapped several controls. "The suits are compensating for the thermal irregularities, but the power draw is higher than expected." "Compensate?" proceed with the operation. On the ground, the Vyrhans soldiers pressed on, recalibrating their systems, still unaware of the silent predators lurking in the snow. Voss's hand tightened on his rifle. "They're feeling it now," he murmured. "Time to make them bleed." A silent signal passed through the team. One by one, the shadows in the snow came to life. The first shot was a whisper of suppressed energy, a perfectly placed round that punctured the helmet of the nearest alien soldier. He dropped without a sound, his body swallowed by the snow before his comrades even registered the attack. Chaos erupted. The aliens, for all their technology, were blind. The snowfall, the cold, the ice, it all worked against them. Their advanced optics faltered, unable to distinguish friend from foe in the blizzard. Meanwhile, the humans moved like ghosts, their white camouflage blending seamlessly, their movements practiced and deliberate. A second alien fell, his body twitching as the cold did its work, seeping into gaps in his armor. Then another. The remaining Vyrhans attempted to regroup, forming defensive positions, but their footing betrayed them. A thin layer of ice, unnoticed beneath the powdery snow, cracked under their weight, sending two of them plunging into a hidden crevasse. Their screams were swallowed by the storm. From the warship, Yhrak's fury grew. "What is happening?" Yhrak's fingers danced across the controls. "They are." He hesitated, processing the data. "They are being hunted." The realization came too late. The last Vyrhan soldier on the ground turned, eyes darting through the white void, searching for an enemy he could not see. The storm howled louder, as if the land itself had risen against them. Then the final shot came, and he crumpled into the snow, lifeless. Silence reclaimed the tundra. Voss exhaled, lowering his rifle. The first engagement was over. The aliens had learned their first lesson about Earth's frozen wastes, and it would not be their last. The wreckage of the alien skirmish team lay scattered beneath the ice, their sleek bodies frozen stiff under layers of frost. The storm, ever merciless, had already begun its work of erasing the evidence, snow piling over their fallen forms like nature itself conspiring to bury them. Captain Elias Voss watched from the ridgeline, his breath steady, his rifle held loosely in gloved hands. They had struck first, but the battle was far from over. Through his scope, he scanned the horizon where the alien warship still hovered, its presence a dark blot against the endless white. The enemy wouldn't ignore this attack. No, this was just the beginning. The Vyrhans were a species built for conquest, their empires spanning dozens of systems. They had never been bested by a primitive world. Their response would be swift and merciless. "Pack it up," Voss ordered, his voice low over the comms. "We reposition before they get their bearings." His team moved like phantoms, vanishing into the storm without a trace. They had trained for this, learned how to let the tundra swallow them whole, how to become part of the landscape. The aliens, for all their arrogance, had not. The counterattack came faster than expected. A tremor ran through the ice, a deep, bone-rattling vibration. Voss barely had time to signal a halt before a column of violet light split the sky. The ground where they had stood moments before exploded, sending up a fountain of molten ice and shattered rock. The warship had begun its retaliation. Drones poured from the vessel's underbelly, sleek and predatory, their sensors sweeping the landscape in rapid pulses. They moved like a hunting pack, methodical, relentless. The Vyrhans had learned their lesson. They were done underestimating Earth's frozen wastes. Voss and his team pressed themselves into the snow, watching as the machines hovered past, their scanning beams cutting through the dark. For a moment, it seemed as though they might go undetected. But then a flare of alien light struck the ice a mere foot from their position, the snow around them evaporating into a cloud of steam. The drones adjusted course, weapons spinning to life. "Move!" Voss barked. The team scattered, breaking in multiple directions as the ice exploded behind them. Lieutenant Anna Petrov was the first to counter, dropping to one knee and launching a handheld EMP grenade. The pulse rippled outward, sending one drone spiraling into the ground where it shattered on impact. The rest recalibrated instantly, but by then, the soldiers were already gone. They didn't fight fair. They didn't stand and trade fire with an enemy that had superior weapons. Instead, they used the terrain like an extension of themselves. One by one, they disappeared into the storm, using natural crevices and ice formations to vanish from sight. The aliens had technology. The humans had the land. For nearly an hour, the battle played out in shadows and whispers. Drones fell, their sleek forms wrenched from the sky by well-placed rounds or EMP pulses. Alien foot soldiers deployed in squads, their heated armor melting holes into the ice with each step. They moved in tight formations, their enhanced optics scanning desperately for enemies they couldn't see. And still they fell. Voss's team struck like ghosts, ambushing from hidden positions, using the blizzard as cover. The Vyrhans returned fire wildly, their frustration evident in the erratic flashes of energy weapons through the storm. But every time they closed in, their quarry was already gone, melting back into the terrain. It wasn't long before the aliens adapted. Voss was leading his squad toward a rocky overhang when the first sign of the trap appeared. A flicker in the snow, a subtle shift in the wind. His instinct screamed. He barely had time to push Anna aside before the ice beneath them erupted, a surge of burning energy cracking the ground apart. They tumbled, rolling down the embankment as Vyrhan soldiers emerged from the storm, weapons humming. The aliens had deployed new tactics, setting proximity traps and funneling the humans into choke points. Their arrogance was gone, replaced by cold, calculated efficiency. Voss hit the ground hard, the breath forced from his lungs. He rolled, bringing his rifle up just in time to fire. The round struck the nearest alien in the visor, sending it stumbling. Another soldier lunged for him, energy blades slicing through the air. Then a crack rang out, sharp as thunder. The Vyrhan soldier jerked back, a bullet piercing through the gap between its armored plates. Anna stood above, her rifle still raised, breath fogging the air. "You're getting slow," she muttered. Voss grunted, pulling himself to his feet. "They're learning." A sharp whistle cut through the comms. Sergeant Malik's voice came through, urgent. "More incoming. Heavy units. We need to move." Voss stole a glance toward the ridgeline. More Vyrhans were advancing, these ones larger, their armor reinforced with heat-diffusing plating. Their weapons glowed with a sickly blue light, radiating enough energy to turn the surrounding ice into vapor. These were not scouts. These were hunters. Fighting them head-on would be suicide. They needed a new strategy. He flicked through his mental map of the terrain, calculating distances, angles. Then he found it, a frozen lake, not far from their position. The ice was thick enough to walk on, but beneath it, frigid, black water, deep enough to swallow an entire platoon. "Change of plans," he said. "We draw them in? Make them chase us?" His team didn't question. They moved, sprinting across the frozen expanse as the enemy pursued. Energy bolts struck the ice, sending cracks snaking across its surface. The Vyrhans followed without hesitation, their heavy footfalls sending tremors through the fragile sheet. Voss reached the far edge first, dropping into cover behind a ridge. He turned, rifle steady. The aliens were halfway across now, their armored forms gleaming in the dim light. He smiled grimly. Now, a single shot rang out, striking a precisely placed charge beneath the ice. The explosion was small, controlled, but it was enough. The weakened surface shattered, a spiderweb of fractures racing outward before the entire center of the lake gave way. The Vyrhans had no time to react. One by one, they plunged into the freezing abyss, their armor dragging them down like anchors. Their heated suits worked against them now, the sudden temperature shift shocking their systems into paralysis. For a moment, silence. Then, slowly, the ice began to refreeze, locking the remaining bodies in a watery grave. Voss exhaled, lowering his rifle. It was a temporary victory. The enemy would regroup. They would adapt again. But for now, the tundra belonged to them. The tundra was no longer silent. The wind carried the deep, mechanical hum of the Vyrhan warship descending lower, its engine struggling against the cold, the very atmosphere clawing at the invaders with invisible hands. The ship's hull was coated in frost, its once perfect design now marred by the relentless assault of Earth's frozen wastes. The aliens had miscalculated. They had assumed their technology would grant them dominion over any world, but Earth had no mercy. Captain Elias Voss crouched low against the ice-covered ridge, watching through his frost-speckled scope as the Vyrhans made their final push. The aliens no longer held the same arrogance they had upon arrival. Now, they moved with the desperation of cornered predators, deploying their remaining forces with brutal efficiency. Heavy infantry, towering exosuits with thick plating and thermal emitters, stomped across the battlefield, melting the ice beneath them. Drones circled overhead, their scanning beams sweeping the blizzard, hunting for the ghosts that had tormented them for days. The Special Forces team was down to its last reserves of ammunition, supplies dwindling, exhaustion creeping into their bones. The tundra had tested them as much as it had their enemy. But they had something the Vyrhans never would, an understanding of the land. This war was not about firepower or numbers. It was about survival. It was about endurance. And the tundra had already chosen its champions. Voss adjusted his earpiece. All teams in position? Anna Petrov's voice crackled through the static. South Ridge is set. Malik has explosives rigged along their approach. Sergeant Malik's voice followed. They're coming fast. Won't be long now. Voss glanced back at the alien warship. The Vyrhans had made their mistake the moment they set foot on this land. But now, they had made another. They had brought their command center within reach. He took a deep breath, the frigid air biting his lungs. We hit them hard. We finished this. The first explosion shattered the ice beneath the lead exosuit. The towering machine lurched, its massive frame breaking through the surface as the frozen abyss swallowed it whole. A second blast ripped through the drone formation, sending flaming wreckage spiraling into the snow. Chaos erupted. The Vyrhans retaliated with raw firepower, energy bolts streaking through the storm, lighting the night in flashes of violet and white. But the humans did not stand and fight. They moved in coordinated bursts, striking and vanishing, using the storm, the terrain, the very ice beneath their feet as weapons. Voss fired a precise shot, his rifle's silencer muffling the crack. A Vyrhan officer staggered back, a perfect hole in its visor. Anna took down another, her rounds finding weak points in the enemy armor. Malik's charges detonated in sequence, collapsing an overhang and sending a squad of aliens plummeting into a frozen ravine. The aliens, despite their technology, were struggling. Their suits, designed for varied climates, were failing. Their vision systems flickered, their servos lagged, their energy shields drained too quickly in the extreme cold. They were built for conquest, not for suffering. But humans were forged in suffering. A desperate shriek erupted from the battlefield as the Vyrhan commander, Wytrak, entered the fray. His armor was bulkier, lined with pulsating heat vents that fought back the cold, his movements faster than the others. A blade of pure energy extended from his gauntlet, carving through ice and rock as he advanced. Voss locked eyes with the alien across the battlefield. This was it. He motioned to his team, signaling them to fall back toward the ridgeline. The plan was already in motion. The warship, now dangerously low, was their true target. If they could force the commander to retreat, if they could break their chain of command, they could end this before reinforcements arrived. Wytrak surged forward, cutting through the blizzard with terrifying speed. Voss barely dodged in time, rolling across the ice as the energy blade slashed through the air where his head had been. He fired twice, but the shots deflected harmlessly off the alien's shield. The commander struck again, and this time, the blade found its mark. Voss gritted his teeth as his side burned, the edge of the weapon grazing his armor, searing through fabric, biting into flesh. He stumbled but kept his grip on his rifle. Anna's voice cut through the comms. "Elias, get clear." Too late. Wytrak lunged for the kill, but the ice beneath him cracked. Voss had led him exactly where he needed to. Malik's detonator clicked. The ground beneath the commander exploded, a precisely placed charge, sending him flying backward. He crashed into the ice, his shield flickering, his heated armor failing against the sudden onslaught of freezing air. The cold, so long kept at bay, finally sank its claws into him. Voss pushed himself up, pain lancing through his side. He leveled his rifle at the fallen alien. YHRAC's violet eyes burned with fury, but behind them, there was something else. Understanding. You fight like the storm, the alien rasped, ice creeping over his body, his advanced physiology no longer able to resist the tundra's embrace. This world is unforgiving. Voss exhaled, steadying his aim. Yeah. His finger tightened on the trigger. Welcome to Earth. The shot rang out. The Vyrhan commander fell still, Frost already claiming him. Above them, the alien warship's engines roared as it began to ascend. The remaining invaders, leaderless, broken, abandoned the battlefield, retreating into the void. The storm swallowed the last traces of their presence. Voss slumped against the ice, the weight of exhaustion finally catching up to him. His team gathered around, checking wounds, reloading weapons, preparing for whatever came next. But there was no counterattack, no second wave. The war, at least for now, was over. Anna knelt beside him, pressing a hand against his wound. We did it. Voss looked out over the battlefield, where the last remnants of the enemy forces had vanished into the blizzard. The tundra stretched out before them, vast, empty, eternal. We survived, he corrected, because that was the difference. The aliens had come to conquer, but the humans had come to endure.